Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here with us today. We are thrilled to talk about a few things today. One is, Slabstack, why it exists and what the product has achieved for producers. And then we're thrilled to unveil the next step in that journey, which is the Backlog product. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce Gage Hollingsworth, our Director of Solutions Engineering, and Lide Olambawanu, our VP of Product. They're going to run you through everything today. They are experts in the heavy materials quoting space. So I will put myself on mute and pass it to them. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Malcolm. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. We'll do our best to maximize this time. So let's go ahead and jump right in and kind of talk about a little bit of the ready mix reality today across the industry. Everybody knows that our producers and customers, they operate across thin margins. Costs are extremely dynamic, extremely volatile, and very hard to get a good handle on. The operations are complex from production to laying to everything that goes into getting this product from your plant to the customers. And every single pricing decision impacts that profitability downstream. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how Slabstack is able to improve some of this core functionality. Most producers have extremely strong operations. Y'all have a really good handle on your business, but sometimes that pricing and forecasting aspect can be a little bit weaker. And to be clear, this is not from lack of trying or lack of effort. It is because tracking these large data sets is, of course, very difficult. And even one step further, making those large data sets digestible, making them actionable is extremely difficult. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We kind of touched on some of the core problems we want to address. Again, many producers are tracking these data sets across Excel spreadsheets, maybe Microsoft Word documents. They're operating between disconnected systems and then using generic tools that really have no place in our industry because they don't know what your struggles are and what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. That manual re-entry between data systems, how much time is somebody spending doing manual data entry instead of a higher priority task? And that results in some of that inconsistent pricing we touched on, billing errors, and then that margin leakage where, hey, maybe you thought you might have been making 20% on a specific mix design at a specific project, but when it's all said and done, you start to realize that somewhere we have lost margin. And all this kind of feeds into a slower sales cycle, quotes that take a little bit longer to send out and are just not as accurate as we would prefer. So why Slabstack? Slabstack is a purpose-built CRM and quoting engine specifically for this industry. We try to extend, and we do extend that operational excellence upstream into the revenue and margin optimization. Again, by trying to make these data sets digestible, actionable, so that you can quickly and efficiently manage your business. And again, that last line, just to reiterate, we are specifically built for ready mix, aggregate, and asphalt producers. This is not a product that we created for another industry and then thought, oh, let's pivot to concrete and try to make it better. No, this product has been built with producers' feedback, with our customers in mind, and again, specifically for this industry. You can see a little bit about our company Slabstack, which is a cystine brand. We have over 100 different companies, over 1,000 users. We've quoted over $20 billion to date, and our users are sending out well over 1,000 quotes a day. So some pretty awesome numbers, and we're proud to partner with each of you. So what does Slabstack change? What do we want to do here? We really want to bring standardization into these cost-driven quotes. We want to make sure that these data pieces are apparent and obvious so that you don't need to go between disconnected systems. We want to align these prices with your real operational costs. What are your costs per minutes? What is your selling general administrative costs, your operating, and a bunch of other variables, of course, that go into this. And then that seamless flow between sales and dispatch, right? Slabstack, we integrate into dispatch systems to track large data sets. And then when you're ready, a sales rep can hit a button on a quote, and we will actually export that quote directly into dispatch, which eliminates that dual manual data entry, which then leads to that last piece on the right side of our screen, reduced billing errors and that margin loss. So we typically see around a 90% or even more reduction in manual quoting when using Slabstack, which then contributes to a very quick return on investment when working with this platform. So very briefly, what we're going to do here today is I'm going to dive into some of the core functionality of Slabstack that many of our users today actually get the chance to use. And from there, we'll be able to look at the newer product that we're actually going to release today. So very quickly, let me go ahead and we will share the Slabstack screen that all of our customers today get to use. I'm going to very, very briefly just touch on that core functionality. This, what we're looking at right now, all of our users know that this is the main dashboard that you log into with customized reporting. Today, you might notice on the right side of my screen, we are going to demo the Slabstack backlog. But first, let me just jump into a project, get everybody up to speed on the core functionality. So quickly, I can search up today's backlog webinar. We've got 3 different bidders, and you might notice here on quantity, we've got 190 cubic yards, but as well as 50 tons. So I'm actually pulling materials from multiple locations, one from a concrete plant and one from a quarry location, all for the same project, and then rerouting this information back to the correct dispatch systems. So what does this project look like? And now we can see the project overview on the left-hand side of our screen. Project details, this is important information, but it's pretty straightforward. What segment am I operating in? What type of tax codes do I need affiliated? What's that start date, end date, bid date? The job site address speaks for itself. Where do we need to get the materials to? And again, down here, you might notice I have 2 different locations, 25th Street Ready Mix Plant, as well as the Valencia Quarry for that aggregates. Scrolling back up here, take a look at some of these different tabs that we have. Quotes, you can see that I have 4 quotes for 3 different customers already created. The buyers right here, we've got 3 different companies. I do have a stakeholder from the DOT involved just to make sure you track all of the relevant parties. And then back here to those products, which is a pretty neat interface. Open up that 25th Street, we've got 150 cubic yards of 4,000, and we have around 40 yards of that 3,000 PSI, showing that unit cost, that unit price, that margin per yard. Pretty nifty system. Collapse that, open up the Valencia Quarry, and now we can see that we've got about 50 tons of 3/8 limestone, as well as what my cost, price, margin, and other relevant fields. Go ahead and collapse that. Forecast, we are running this project in the month of February. And then the last piece we'll kind of touch on in about a moment or two is going to be the activity tracking. Like, how do we tie these projects to your customers, to your prospects, to the bidders, and help you manage these processes? So last thing before I jump into the actual activity tracker, let me just show you how quickly I can do some price optimization on these quotes. Let's say that down here, Delta Construction, they call me up and say, hey, Gage, I really want to work with you, but your price is just a little bit too high for us to manage. So I'm going to click on this quote, load it back up here, edit quote. I'm going to go to a new revision, creating a same quote number, same invoice number, but for an existing quote. In this case, I'm going to just scroll down here to the products and let's see what I can do. I mean, right now I'm operating at about a 26% margin on this 4,000 PSI. That is a very healthy margin. But in this case, Delta is an amazing customer of mine. They keep my trucks moving quickly. They don't hold us up. So I'm going to see, what happens if I drop this price down to maybe just $4 less, $138 per yard. That margin is still approaching 24%, about $32 per yard. So I can very quickly see that even though I decrease this price a little bit, this would be a profitable job that I would be proud to work with Delta on. And of course, I can do that on the same product down here, my 3,000 PSI. Now, I do want to touch on, if I were to try to sell this product at $120 per yard, if this margin drops below 10%, the system will actually lock me out. It will not allow me to send this quote to the customer, and it definitely will not allow me to send this quote to dispatch. That's a conversation for another day. We have all types of workflow approvals we can implement into the system to make sure that your team operates within parameters cohesively towards a profitability goal. I'm going to put this at $125 per yard. So go ahead, come down here and hit save. I touched on the workflow approval. Right now, my system is checking the math again, just to make sure that Gage is in fact trying to send out a profitable quote that is not, say, above 5,000 yards, because that would automatically be rerouted to a manager for review. I'm going to hit auto approve, and the system is again going to check that math one more time just to make sure. And now I can actually click generate this quote, take a look at it, download it, print it out before I send it out to the customer. And of course, in 2026, we can create any quote formats, colors, shapes that you need. So now that this quote is ready to go, last thing I want to show you is a little bit of that customer relationship management. How do we stay on top of opportunities? Click on this project on the left side of my screen. It's going to take me directly back to the view we were at, only now I will have a 5th quote created extremely quickly and ready to go. And I'm going to go to the buyers tab and let's click on Delta Construction. The quote that I just created was for this company. I can directly go over here to the project and see webinar. That project exists underneath the company portfolio. Same thing, of course, with the quote. So we get on a very granular, specific individual user level to make sure that this data is stacked and sliced accordingly. And now, if I click on the quote, we're back where we started. Click on the project, we're back where we began, which brings us to the activity tracking piece. Go to the companies, just showing you a different interface and how quickly I can navigate the system. Click on Charlie Concrete, and you're going to notice, what is this top activity here? The demo, that Slabstack backlog. So these activities are going to be tied to projects. They are also tied to individual companies and then the contacts within that company, right? So there's multi-level of ways to attach activities to stay on top of important bid dates. Maybe just to put a reminder that I sent a quote out 22 days ago and I have not heard back. So time for me to get on the horn, maybe pick up some tacos and show up at their office and see, hey, are we going to work together or not? The last thing about this activity tracking, we do have another beautiful interface. Here's my calendar. You might notice that I actually have that same activity on here. Click on it, open it up, see what's going on, see which companies, see which contacts are involved. And then, of course, over here on the right side of our screen, that same activity. So I could have a dozen different activities assigned to myself, assigned to Lide, and we all have visibility into the activity tracking across projects, across companies, and across contacts. So I'm going to go ahead, even though we are not done yet, I'm going to mark this as done as we have started it. Go ahead and hit save. We can track these activities. Now I see a nice green banner that this is completed. And I'm going to go ahead and kick this back over to my great friend Lide for this next aspect.
Thank you, Gage. So Gage is showing you how Slabstack handles the code inside CRM activity tracker, margin visibility, and all the things that we built the software to do. But there's still a massive blind spot that we've heard from every producer. There's a blind spot between what you're coding and what actually gets delivered. And right now, the way it works is most of you are reconciling this data manually. Someone on your team, maybe the VP, an admin, somebody's pulling ticket data from dispatch, getting that into an Excel spreadsheet, and manually comparing that against what you coded. And this is a very tedious and manual effort. And by the time you realize a project is 40% behind where it should be, you already feel it in your P&L and in your operations. And this actually costs you a lot. You're flying blind in capacity planning. You can't have an honest conversation with the customer on what's happening. When scope changes, you don't really know how to handle that because nobody's adjusting the forecast more consistently. And the truth is, many of these, most teams set it up as a set it and forget it. So you set up the forecast once when the project starts, and then you forget about it until later when it's too late. And so your forecast at that point by month 3 is fiction. And so what we're trying to do is, what if instead of finding out you're behind at the end of the quarter, you kind of knew in real time? What if your system flagged it for you automatically before it showed up in the operations and the P&L? That is what we're doing with Backlog. And with Backlog, what we're showing is connecting what you forecast with what you sold and what actually gets delivered. It's a simple idea. Think of it as closing the loop. Our Slabstack knows what you quoted, the dispatch knows what was shipped. With Backlog, we bring those two things together to give you the full picture in one place. And this matters because, every one of you already thinks in terms of backlog. It's how much work is you have remaining on the sold project. So how much work did you budget compared to what you actually quoted, and then how much you have remaining. The problem is that a lot of this tracking happens in your head or in a spreadsheet. And Backlog and Slabstack, we make sure that this data is always visible, always accurate, and always current. And so we talked to lots of producers across our customer base, and they all said the same thing. We know our backlog roughly, but we don't trust the numbers. And that's the gap we're closing here. So the whole point is to give leaders visibility before issues show up, not after the project is underwater, not when your CFO asks you for data and you don't really have the answer. So what Backlog enables, real-time forecast versus delivery comparison. So let's say you quoted a project at 5,000 yards over 6 months. You're in month 3. Are you on track today? You need to pull up that ticket data today, build a spreadsheet, do the math. With Backlog and Slabstack, you just look at the dashboard and you have that data right there. We give you a clear view of what is sold versus what is remaining. You can actually see exactly how much is left on the project. It's not a guess of, I think we're halfway. The actual number is this. We actually show you that data that we pull from your ticket dispatch information. You can identify at-risk project. This is a big one. Backlog flags projects that are failing behind automatically. So let's say you have a project that should have started in November of 2025. We're currently in February of 2026. we'll send you an alert, let you know, hey, this project is behind schedule. Did you lose the job, or do you need to update the timeline for when to start? And we do that for you and give you a simple button to click that and go from there. We also allow you to give you a sense of controlling the variance. So what Gage will eventually show you in the next steps is about, are your projects at risk? Is it on track? And we allow you to set the variance tolerance of, hey, if what I quoted compared to what I shipped is, within a 15% range, maybe that's fine. If it's a little bit more, maybe that's at risk. I want to be aware of it more in real time and all that. And so we're going from reactive reporting to proactive control. Instead of looking in the rearview mirror at the end of the quarter, you're actually looking through the windshield. And this is meant to make your life easier. So when you find out you're behind on a project, we're not just throwing a bunch of data points at you. We're just telling you, here's the project, here's where you are, here's where you should be, and here's the gap. It's simple, it's actionable. I'm going to hand it off to Gage to take you through how this works in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lide. So now that we have kind of looked at the core functionality of Slabstack, right? That's the product that our customers have been using today in the United States and all over the country beyond. And Lide just kind of introduced the new feature. It's a completely new product that our team has been working on incredibly hard. From what I've noticed across our customers, this has been the most requested product, the most requested feature across the industry, right? Rectifying what are these quotes, what are these forecasts, and then what is actually being shipped. And then what does that customer performance look like? What does that project performance look like? And then even down to the granular, very specific product performance tied back to the projects and, of course, those customers. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to go ahead and share the new feature that we are proud to present, the backlog of actuals. So now I'm going to take you through the backlog and actuals feature. This is the main dashboard, of course, the home screen you're met with when you access it. Now, one thing I need to call out, this is my fake demo environment. I have been creating many fake data, fake projects, all types of skewed data for the purpose of trying to flush out bugs, of course, and see if I can break it so that Lida and her team figure out Gage is great at breaking things. I'm not the best at fixing it. So what you're going to see is some of my data does not make the most sense, but that's okay because I input data that didn't make sense. What we're looking at here, left side of our screen, what's that quoted bid volume? How much are we sending out in quotes? The forecast, it's weighted by confidence. And of course, this forecast, the confidence levels can be adjusted to your business unit, and your team. And then that outstanding backlog. How many yards do I have on the book that I have not shipped? You're going to notice my this month actual here in green. I don't have any yards shipped. I don't own any concrete plants. I don't even have any trucks, so I don't have any volume shipped. And because of that, on the right side of our screen, you're going to see that all of my projects are at risk. My volume is not being shipped accordingly. My products are not moving, and therefore my projects are incredibly stagnant. So just keep that in mind. Another cool thing up in the top right, it's kind of hard to see. If you wanted to go in here and look at specific projects or even a group of projects, you can select them in this dropdown. And this top dashboard, these volumes in the data will then conform to those projects in that specific data set. So now I'm going to scroll down a little bit and let's examine some of these different tabs. Dashboard overview, again, is kind of where we are today, this left tab. And what this does is it shows us all of the projects in the system. And if I wanted to search on it by, let's do quoted volume, click it once, click it again, and now we can see that there's a Walmart Supercenter from our customer, Sierra Concrete. Of course, anytime you see a hyperlink, if I click on this project, it takes us to that previous project overview we looked at. If I click on the customer, then I can see every project and every quote I've ever sent them, as well as that activity tracking. Then moving from left to right, we've got that quoted volume. What's that forecasted volume? How much volume has actually been shipped on this project to this customer? And then what is the variance between those numbers? And continue scrolling over here. And keep in mind, I'm very zoomed in my screen, so I have to navigate a little bit differently than our end users. The status, this project is absolutely at risk. That start date was supposed to be April of 2025. We dispatched a truck in August, and that last truck was also dispatched in August. So we show you when was the first ticket and what is that last ticket. And are these conforming to your start dates and your end dates? And we'll talk more about some of these risk banners, these flags that we can attach here in a moment. But this is just a quick overview of how all the projects can be analyzed quickly. And then we take it one step further, location performance. Right now, I'm looking at all markets. Of course, we can configure this customized for your business. But here at the location performance, every plant is going to have a capacity that you could crank out in a perfect world. And then you're also going to have a budgetary constraints on that production level. So what we will show you is we want to help our customers maximize their plants to the fullest capacity without stretching yourself too thin, right? It can be very difficult if you win a bunch of business and let's say I can crank out 60,000 yards in a year. Well, now I've won 80,000 yards. Where do I pull that extra 20,000 yards from? And hopefully with these type of flags and risk banners, we'll be able to quickly identify what projects we want to move forward with. Are we being stretched too thin? And then back to that price optimization and specific margin tracking, make informed, educated decisions about what projects we actually want to move forward on. So that's a little bit of the location performance and the project performance. Now you're going to notice we get even more specific on project details. So let me scroll down here and find one, my Overland Park storm shelter right here. So you're going to notice right here, it says, hey, Gage, this project is at risk. We have forecasted about 3,400 cubic yards. I've actually shipped 0 yards. Again, I don't own any trucks, so therefore my variance is that same 100% variance of 3,473 cubic yards. But we drill down a little bit even more specific. So I can click on this arrow and see, okay, what is the monthly breakdown? When was this volume supposed to be shipped? Because you can see in January, February, and March, I haven't shipped any of the volume that I needed to keep this project on track. Maybe January was on track, and let's say that I actually shipped 288 yards and some change, and that month is good to go. I know February has been tough all across the country on weather, so maybe then February I was not able to ship because again, there's snow all over the country. And then maybe hopefully in March, you can actually start to move some of this volume again. So we will track these projects on a monthly breakdown when it comes to the volumes and quantities being shipped, quoted, and forecasted, and then what that backlog is. And then again, we drill down even further across products. So as an example, maybe my 3,500 PSI product, for whatever reason, it's been able to ship, and this product tied to the project is on track. I am shipping the volume accordingly. My backlog is not building up. My actual volume is in agreement with my quoted and forecasted amount. But for whatever reason, my 3,000 high slump mix design has not been shipped. So we'll actually show you, hey, this project, you might want to put some attention to it because while you are on track to meet your goal for one product or mix design, you have another product or mix design that has not been meeting your plan and forecast. So that is what we're looking at here in the project details, the monthly breakdown, the product breakdown, which brings us back to the top of the page. And that next kind of evolution about what you do with this data is going to be that customer performance, right? So we look at project performance, product performance, and now we're going to look at customer performance. So you can see the customer name over on the left-hand side. You can see how many active projects they are running with you and your business. What's that average load size? What is the actual volume being shipped to this customer? And then these very important wait times and unload times. So in Slabstack, as all of our users today know, we have extremely extensive reporting in the main core functionality. And so now that we are able to track this post-pour ticket data from dispatch and bring it back into Slabstack, then we can get very, very specific reporting around projects and customers to say, hey, I thought Gage's Ready Mix Finishing Company was a great customer. He's been taking a lot of volume from me in 2025, but it ends up he never unloads my truck in under an hour. He holds my truck on the job site for 45, 50 minutes, and really nobody knows what's going on. We can then equip you with that data to, hopefully have these positive conversations about how to replicate success going forward with your customers, with your projects, and with your products. But maybe sometimes you need to have that conversation about, your price might increase by $1 or $2 per yard, and here is why. The profitability is going down because my delivery costs are skyrocketing for every X amount of minutes that it sits on the job site not being productive. So very simple interface here. You do not need to be a computer expert to get into Slabstack and efficiently manage your business. I am certainly not a computer expert like Lide and a lot of the other folks on our team, but I have a pretty good handle on how to get these projects moving in a profitable manner using Slabstack. So this brings us to our last tab here on the right-hand side. Lide touched on it earlier, but let's take a look. Alerts and actions. So of course you can search individual projects and see exactly what's going on, but rather than drill down on one project, let's just take a glance and see what we are looking at today. Filter it. We have that volume variance. So if there's a discrepancy, and we'll drill down on it. Then we have that start delay and end delay, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? Is the start date, is the volume shipped in accordance with when you expected it to? And then is this project being completed in the time that you expected it to? So let's start with volume variance. Click on my filter, and right here at the very top, looks like we are working at a brewing company, and we can see very obviously there's a 20.2 variance, or on the right hand side, that 20%. Because I quoted 3,000 yards, and I've actually shipped just under 2,400 yards, there's that 20 variance between these numbers. There's a couple different things I could do here. I could click on the project hyperlink, which takes us back to that project overview with the quotes, the buyers, the products, and all that good data. Or I could actually come in here and update my forecast and just say, you know what, Gage, we thought we were going to use 3,000 yards. Plans change. Things happen all the time in construction that are, very difficult to plan for. And I can come into my forecast and say, actually, this quoted volume of, call it 2,400 yards, is the goal. And now this project is no longer a variance. It doesn't have that 20% variance. It's not a risk. So that's the variance for volume. We do have multiple parameters. So we have low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And then we can adjust your risk tolerance for your business as it varies wildly by market, by city, and of course, individual business. So just keep in mind that 20% for your business, you might consider that a very high risk. Well, that's okay. We can classify that as high risk. Let's go down to start delay. Again, this is relatively straightforward, but it's a cool feature because right here, we were supposed to start this project a couple days ago. And this is a Culver's. I love those milkshakes, right? This project is 2 days overdue. Now, again, let's talk about what's been going on across the United States. The weather hasn't been great. So we can all be in agreement, right? We call the owner of the project, we call the finishing company, and everybody's like, look, it's nobody's fault. This project didn't start on time. And in this case, I'm actually going to update the start date, drop down here from the 23rd and say, look, now the weather's cleared out. Let's move some materials. Update it, it's 25th. Scroll down and hit save. That project's no longer at risk, right? So again, it just flags these opportunities in these projects and quickly puts them in front of you and your team's faces so you can, make actionable, quick decisions on the fly. Or hopefully this doesn't happen too often, but I've been in sales a while, and sometimes we need to mark things as lost. And that's what that big giant yellow button on the left side of our screen does. It'll go ahead and mark that project as lost, pull it out of that at-risk category. If you prefer that every time you mark a project as lost, that we attach a lost reason, we can do that as well. So that's that start delay. And again, these parameters are adjustable. Maybe you want to call low risk up to 10 days, medium risk, etc. We can adjust those parameters for you. Now we looked at the volume variance. We looked at customer performance, project performance, product performance across the timeline. Now that brings us to, again, kind of a self-explanatory, but a very important metric to track, end delay. So you can see right here, my Disney Springs project. I was supposed to be done in December, or here's another example. I was supposed to be done over 420 days ago. The project hasn't even started. So in this case, I would probably mark that one as lost. It takes you directly into that project. You can notice my status is updated automatically. If I wanted to attach notes or choose a loss reason, this is where I would do it. And then I would just hit save, and it clears off that specific project from that in delay risk. So kind of to recap, we've looked at the bid volume. What's that forecasted volume? What's the backlog at the plant level with all the projects in the system? How much volume, how many yards or tons are being shipped to service these customers in these projects? Then we have those banners, which is what we just looked at last, the at-risk projects, and the multiple ways we can identify at-risk projects, whether there is a discrepancy between volume being shipped, volume being quoted and sold, whether these projects are not starting on time, whether these projects are not ending on time. And then, as a reminder, we do have the same type of risk flags we can attach at the location level to make sure that these plants are being utilized to their maximum capacity, to make sure that you're not stretching yourself too thin. And then with this backlog product, tied back into our core Slabstack CRM functionality, we can start to get that very, very specific granular reporting to make sure that we are pursuing jobs that are as profitable as we want. Maybe you can do a 90,000 yard at 15, no, call it 9% margin. But what if there's three other 30,000 yard projects and each one of those have a higher profitability? We're not here to tell you how to run your business. We just want to make this data digestible so you can say, you know what, rather than doing one 90,000 yard pour at X profitability, let's do 5 smaller projects equaling 90,000 yards, yet those margins are higher. So that is kind of the very brief, high level overview of our backlog product. And with that said, we are going to jump back over into a little bit of the last slides, and soon we're going to open it up for questions. So I really appreciate your time today. Just to recap, we looked at the core functionality. That last Slabstack now plus the backlog product connects those customer relationships into that cost-based pricing, which then flows into the forecasting and then that production execution, right? How much is being shipped? Is it being shipped on time? And are these projects being finished on time? Which that financial outcome that we are all here to hopefully improve in 2026, kind of full circle, product from quote to cash, everything here between Slabstack and Cystine can do it all. So one unified data-driven sales engine is what we are very proud to release to you and the market today.
Right.
And thank you so much, Lydie. I'm going to go ahead and stop. I've been preaching at you guys for a while. Please take over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gage. And then to wrap this up before we go into Q&A, I just think some key takeaways for you all is, you all know this already, but to reiterate, pricing is the most important margin lever in your business. You can't control the material cost, you can't control fuel prices, but you can control how you price and how you quote and make sure that reflects your cost. And that's where margin is won and lost. Manual quoting creates hidden risk. That's the essence of what we're doing at Slabstack. Every time somebody opens an Excel, types in a number, emails it out, there's a high chance of error. With our Slabstack software, that's really what we're taking away and reducing those errors and making this a lot more seamless for you and your team. Third point is backlog closes the forecast to production gap. This is a piece that's been missing for a while. You quote, you sell, and then you just hope it works out. But with backlog, you don't have to hope anymore. It gives you the data to take action on. And last point, connecting sales and operations builds resilience. When your sales team and your operations team are working from the same data, you can make better decisions faster, you catch problems early, and you're not scrambling at the end of the quarter to make any adjustments. You get that data up front, you know what to do, you take action, and you run your operations seamlessly. And so thank you for your time today. I'm going to hand it over to Malcolm for next steps.
Absolutely. But real quick, before I hand it to Malcolm, as he is the moderator, the question king, I just want to remind everybody, if you weren't aware, go ahead and book your flight because Expo is next week in Las Vegas. It is in tandem with the NRMCA and NSSGA annual conference this year. So please stop by the North Hall. Cystine's booth and Slabstack's booth are a stone's throw away from each other. Both of our booths will be fully staffed with a bunch of excited folks ready to speak to you about, hey, what are our products? How are they used today? Hands-on demonstrations. Or if you just want to, brainstorm and talk about best practices, please come by. You can see the agenda here on the right side of my screen. This agenda is also live on the Cystine website. So please, I look forward to seeing everybody in Las Vegas next week. And now, Malcolm, please go ahead and be my question king.
It would be my honor. All right, let's jump into some questions. First one is a great question. So does this work with Command, getting all the actual information back into Slabstack?
Yes, it does. So it works with Command, it works with Cystine, and a few other dispatch systems. Feel free to contact your sales rep to figure out if it works for your dispatch system. But we support Command and Cystine.
All right, next one. Are you able to show a consolidated view of a plant group on a month-by-month basis of backlogged volume? Can monthly budgeted volume be overlaid in the backlog for comparison purposes?
Okay, so
Time, if you want.
Yep. So I hate to answer questions with questions, right? But you always ask, what do you mean by a group of plants? Because my first initial reaction is yes, absolutely. Because in Slabstack, we can configure markets fully customizable, and we can also configure divisions. So a nice hierarchical structure and organization, fully customizable. So yes, we can group those plants in whatever way that you feel fits your business needs best. And then once we group them that way, by selecting that market in that backlog feature we looked at, if I were to select that market, it would be all of that group of plants, and then therefore outputting your backlog, what's being shipped, what's quoted and forecast across a group of plants.
Yeah, I think to add to that, we can do for the sake of time, is we have a special reporting section for backlog where everybody who buys the backlog's product gets that reporting attached to it, and we can always customize that report to be sliced and diced the way you see fit, and that's something that's available for all the customers of the backlog product.
All right, next one. How does the data flow between Slabstack and our existing dispatch systems? Is the backlog view updated in real time, or is there a manual sync required to see the actual delivered volumes?
Yeah, there's no manual sync. We automate that process, and then periodically throughout the day, we do the checks and do the syncs and make sure that the data is as reflective on a day-to-day basis. But no manual sync at all. It's automated.
Right. Do you have a way to show non-project work on the backlog? For example, like everyday residential or COD? And I think as you answer this question, we should also answer the question that wasn't asked but is relevant, which is what about orders that originate in dispatch?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, so right now what we have available is showing you what is exactly in Slapstack, comparing that to what is in your dispatch. But coming in the next few months, 2 to 3 months, is bringing in all the unquoted work, the COD work from your dispatch and reflecting that accurately as well in Slapstack. So for right now, we focus the first phase on what is in Slapstack, what is in dispatch. Let's get that correct. Let's get that right. And now that we've done that, the next phase is let's pull all your data from dispatch, pull that into Slapstack so you can get an accurate view of your backlog across all your locations.
Great. What specific data points does Slabstack use to flag a project as at risk versus one that is on track?
Yeah, I think Gage showed you a few things. So we have at risk, we have three different status. We have at risk, warning, and on track. So at risk has a variance. So we set it internally for ourselves as, if the forecast versus what we actually shipped is greater than 20%, that's at risk. It means there's a big disparity between what I expected to ship and what was actually done. But this is something that is going to be configurable for all customers. So you can set it yourself and say, actually, for me, at this plant, at this location, or at this division, at risk is actually, we're going to take a wider risk. So maybe it's not 20% for you. You're kind of like, if it's, 30% is at risk, you can make that adjustment yourself. So we give you the toggles and the levers to pull, but those are the three different categories that we have the statuses at risk. What is significantly off between what you forecast and what you actually shipped? Warning, what is kind of getting close to at risk that you should be aware of? And on track, is it, within a small percentage difference between what you forecast and what you actually ship? And you will let you set that lever based on what your preference. That's going to be configurable as well.
Great. Will this work for a small rural plant?
Sure. If you have the data on your dispatch and we have the dispatch, sure. Even better, it's probably easier for you too. But Gage, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to we're very fortunate to work with some really cool companies all over the country and beyond. And oftentimes, some of these rural plants or smaller companies can really benefit from these type of softwares because you might be an owner operator that is one day helping move aggregate around in the machine, and the next day you're trying to do your sales and your quoting, and then later on, you're done with your work day, and now you start trying to rectify, hey, did we ship the amount of volume that matched up with our plan? Are we on track with all these projects? So I would say yes, absolutely. These tools can be extremely beneficial, especially for all of these producers that are just wearing many hats, that are really in the throes of operations every day and don't have the time to do very tedious manual data entry and rectifying across accounts.
Does the tool help build unit cost, or is that a constant input?
It'd be good to understand what that meant. I would say one of the things we're going to add to the phase two. So this phase one of what we worked on focused a lot on first things. What is in Slapstack? What is in your dispatch? Also, what is the volume? It was based on volume. The next iteration of this is going to include your cost data. So what did you actually quote what did you actually cost on your quotes? And then what do you actually get charge the customer as the cost? So what's the actual cost? What's like your expected cost? That's going to be the next phase.
More so on these data points. So, and today, we're really trying to streamline it and go quickly, but every single plant and location in Slabstack has an entire data set attached on the back end. And these data sets are encompassing and very specific. Again, talking about things like your cost per minute, average distance to job sites, average load size, average time loaded washed versus unloading the concrete and then washing after. So those are just some of the variables tracked at each individual location, including your selling general administrative cost as well as those operating costs. So once you can really dial in all of these data points and get very specific, that makes that margin optimization much more beneficial, much more impactful. And the critical component is that it is realistic. So I would say yes, like all of these data points are tracked at such a granular level that and of course, during onboarding, we don't just say, hey, here's the keys to Slabstack, go driving and have fun. We have an extremely talented team on the back end that many of you work with today to make sure that this data is mapped correctly, that the data and the math makes sense. And that's before we ever go live on the product. So yeah, that's a great question. And one that is very complicated and we can take that one offline for sure.
Great. Let's do one last question and then we can wrap up. I do want to let everyone know that's on the webinar right now that we're going to circulate a recording of the webinar to everyone that RSVP'd. So if there's anybody you want to share this with or you missed a point, don't sweat it. You'll get an email from me probably Friday, but maybe as early as tomorrow that you can circulate internally for anybody else that may not have been able to join. So last question here. Do we need to start forecasting usage by individual products in a project?
Yeah, so there's going to be the way the forecast work is twofold. So in Slabstack product, you can forecast at the sort of the project level, where you can, whenever you enter the products that are going to be a part of that project, you can kind of estimate that in the product section, and then that feeds into the forecast level of Slabstack. We can also use there's an override section in the details where you can say, I don't really know how much of this product, this 3000 PSI I'm going to use, but I know I'm going to use it, but I think I might use like 5,000 yards or whatever. There's a detail section that has overrides where you can override the volume and the quantities that you're going to use. And so depending on which one you use, if we notice that there's a lot of data in the product section by product, we'll use that data because we think it's better representative of the backlog data. But if you're kind of like, I don't know, I know it's this product, but I also know I'm going to split it across, and I'm going to use two products, but I know the total across those two products is 5,000 yards, we'll take that data as input and then use that as our basis for comparison instead. So if you have the data at the product level, we'll use that data. If you're not sure, but you have it in the override section, we'll use that data instead.
All right. I think we are right on the 45-minute mark. So just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy days to be here with us. Again, you will receive a recording of this webinar. Big thank you to Gage and Lide for being on with us today. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and hope to see you all at ConExpo next week.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. Great week. Stay safe.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Bye.